This is Brother Kasha Kwala coming back at you with another lesson, giving all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Chakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone, who rule and teach well. Peace, love, salutation to the elect 144 first fruit. All right, so today is going to be going through Second Esdras, understanding Second Esdras chapter 11. We're going to say like from verse 24 to verse 29. Understanding those particular verses, and we're going to get into a little bit, into it, not dive so deep into it just for the sake of time. The articles that I have up, I'm going to put into the description box below. Lord willing, I remember to do so y'all can go ahead and do some studying on it. So the main thing I want to focus on, so we're going to be really speaking about 4 different Caesars or emperors during the time of the Roman Empire. Okay, and those 4 Caesars that we're going to be speaking about today is Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. All right, usually they call those 4 the year of the 4 emperors. When you look it up, that was a heavy time of war, or you could say civil war, within Rome at that time. Okay. That was right before, 70 AD and things of that nature. And I know we always mention 70 AD, but we're going to get into 66 AD as well, because that was another time when the Romans came down on Judea and pretty much destroyed it. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Lord willing, this is edifying and clarifying as well. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 11 and 24. It says, "Then saw I also the 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6 and remained under the head that was upon the right side, for the 4 continued in their place." All right. So let's go into it. This is the 24th verse, Salakia. It says, "Then I saw I also that 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6. Now the 6 feathers are in conjunction, they're within the 8 contrary feathers, which you can read. I want to say like in the verses above. Verse 3, it says, "And I beheld, and out of the feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and became little feathers and small." Now there were 8 contrary feathers, and I'm going to mention those contrary feathers right now in no particular order. Okay, so the 8 contrary feathers were Galba, Otho, Vitellius, Nero, Domitian, Claudius, Vespasian, and Titus. And I'm going to say it again. The 8 contrary feathers were in no particular order. All right, you can put them in order if you would like. So it would be, matter of fact, let me see if now I'm gonna put them in order. So the just for edification purposes. So the 8 will start with Claudius, then Nero, then Galba, Otho, Vitellius, then Vespasian, then Titus, then Domitian. Okay. So those would be the 8 contrary. All right. So there were 6 feathers, but 2 of them divided themselves from those 6. Okay. So we're going to keep in mind Nero at this point. Okay. We're going to disregard Claudius. Okay. We're going to keep in mind Nero. All right. Just keep him in mind. Keep him on standby, you could say. It says, "And remain under the head." All right. Because there's 3 heads, which the first 3 heads were who? It was Julius. I want to say Julius, Pompey, and Crassus, if I'm saying his name right. Those were the 3 heads, but they did end up coming back. Spoiler alert, they ended up coming back as Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. All right. It says, "And remain under the head." That's how you know reincarnation is true. All right. It says, "And remain under the head that was upon the right side, for the 4 continued in their space, or in their place." All right. Verse 25, It says, and I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set up themselves and to have rule. Exactly. They thought to set themselves up and have rule, thinking they were going to rule for a long time. But we know and understand when we read about Augustus further up in this chapter. Okay. Matter of fact, going to verse, let's see. Let's start at let's start at 14. It says no 13. And it was so that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So the next following stood up and reigned and had a great time. And it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like the first, that it appeared no more. Then came there a voice unto it and said, Hear, thou that hast borne rule over the earth so long, this I say unto thee, before thou beginnest to appear no more, there shall none after thee attain unto thy time, neither unto the half thereof. And that was speaking of Augustus, because he ruled for what, 40 some odd years. Okay. And then the next one to rule after him, when you get to verse 18, it says, Then arose the third and reigned as the other before and appeared no more also. When you go into the third, that's Tiberius. And it says what? Neither unto half thereof. And most scholars said Augustus ruled for about 40 to 44 years. So 44 years of rulership. Tiberius ruled for 22 years. So the scripts are spot on to history. Literally ruled half the time that Augustus ruled. Okay, so verse 17 was Augustus. Verse 18 was Tiberius, who literally ruled half the time. Okay, so going back down, they thought themselves to rule just like Tiberius did, just like Augustus did, so on and so forth. But it wasn't, they thought that was the case, but it wasn't the case. That's why it says again, thought to set up themselves. They thought, you thought, but it ain't happening. All right, because things have to play out. So verse 26, it says, and I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly appeared no more. Now what? In the inception of the video, I said we're really going to speak heavily on the year of the four emperors. So who was the first one? Galba. So verse 26 is Galba. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. And it says shortly appeared no more because Galba only ruled for 7 months. So shortly, he had a short reign and was taken out. We're going to get a little bit more into detail. Verse 27, it says, but I want to get each verse and put the Caesar's name next to each verse, if you see what I'm saying. So verse 27, it says, and the second was sooner away than the first. So the second was sooner away than the first, which by default, it will put Otho there. And Otho, and this shows the validity of the scripts and how spot on it is. Otho only ruled for 3 months. He ruled from January to April. Here, the end, kind of like the middle end of January to the middle of April. All right, so he ruled for a short time, 3 months, which was shorter than Galba, his 7 months. Okay, verse 28. All right, verse 28. It says what? And I beheld, and lo, the two that remained also in themselves, Salakia thought also themselves to reign. Now, this is where I know we said 27 is Otho, but Otho kind of goes into 28 as well. This is Otho in Vitellius. So now we include Vitellius. Vitellius only ruled for 8 months. Okay, Vitellius came up in April, mid-April as well, to overtake Otho. Okay, verse 29. And when and when they so thought, behold, right? You see how many times it says they thought to do this, they thought to do that, because there was something about to come up. All right, one of the heads were about to awaken. It says, and one of the heads, I mean up here, where it says, Verse 1, then I saw a dream, and beheld, there came up from the sea an eagle which had 12 feathers, 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. These 3 heads are about to wake up. That's why it always says they so thought, because these heads have to wake up and begin their rule. It says, and when they so thought, behold, there awakened one of the heads that were at rest, namely it that was in the midst. And that's the point I want to get at right here. Now we're going to start going into a little bit of detail. It says, for that was greater than the 2 other heads. Correct. Now that head that was in the midst, this was Vespasian. Okay. So let's go into Vespasian. All right. So as you can see here, I went on Wikipedia. All right, I just went down to his early career. All right. You start at the top, but I just went ahead and skipped all that. Y'all can read it though. But I went down to his movements and his actions that, he was, things that he was doing. So I'm going to start here at the later political career from 51 to 66. Now, understanding the times and the years, 51 to 66, Vespasian was not in the seat of being a Caesar. Vespasian came into being a Caesar at 69 AD, not 51 or 66. So what was he doing here? So I'm going to go ahead and go to this second paragraph. It says, Vespasian used his time in North Africa wisely. All right, because you got to remember how Rome took over North Africa. You had the First and Second Punic Wars. Now, one of the Punic Wars, the main Punic War, the second one, where you had Hannibal, that's right, if I'm saying it correctly, who actually almost took down Rome because he was making his voyage across the Alps to get over into Italy to ultimately sack the Romans. But when you go into that voyage, pretty much, or that flank that Hannibal was making, Scipio was actually making his flank to one of the capitals of Carthage, in this sense would be North Africa. So they're both making those moves. Once Hannibal got word that Scipio was made this move, he had to retreat and withdraw his forces from Rome and go right back through those mountains, which killed off a lot of his elephants and his what you could say his troops and things of that nature. But they in turn finally made it back to face Scipio in what you call the Battle of Zuma, okay, which was the final battle, the end all be all of the Punic War. It was a strong battle, but the Romans prevailed and ended up taking over North Africa, in turn giving the name Scipio Africanus, and they named that place Africa, which the Greek word Afri means land of the hot. And again, you can look all these things up. That's why he was stationed in North Africa. Because one thing you have to understand, and I'm going to give another spoiler alert here, Vespasian was a general under Nero, Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. Okay? So he was always in the midst or in the middle of things. That's why it says that. Namely, it that was in the midst. So I'm going to reread it, verse 29. And when they so thought, behold, there awake one of the heads that were at rest, in this case Vespasian, namely it that was in the midst. And we're reading how he was in the midst of things right now, just off of this first sentence. All right, so continuing on. Usually, governorships were seen by ex-consuls as opportunities to extort huge amounts of money to regain the wealth they had spent on their previous political campaigns. Okay, so when you further read on to this, he didn't use that time to get money. He used it in a different sense. So skipping down, it says Vespasian used his time in North Africa making friends instead of money, something that would be far more valuable in the years to come. Because what? You want people on your side. Prime example of this what reminds me of President Trump. People, he filed for bankruptcy 50 million times. Okay, I'm just saying a lot of times. And really, people like, oh, Trump, he filed for bankruptcy. People don't understand the position that he was in, and when he filed the bankruptcy was probably the best move he could make. Okay, and I'm not saying that is in a what you could say a last resort. When you file a bankruptcy, taxes are not counted against you during that specific time when you filed the bankruptcy. So he kept a lot of his money and assets by making that move, which people don't understand. How else would he get into a position of being the president of the United States? He made friends in the inside. Trump made friends in the inside. Was Trump a senator? Fuck no. Most senators end up being presidents. Okay? Was Biden a senator? Yes. Was Obama a senator? Yes. Was Bush a senator? Yes. Was Bill Clinton a senator? Yes. But Trump made friends. Okay? And it's the same thing Vespasian did. He made friends to be on his side, which, like it says, will become more valuable in the years to come. He knew this because it was all a setup. That's how the Spirit had him work. Very deceptive. Okay? So let's keep going. Let's go to the first Roman Jewish Roman War in 66-69. Now again, he started ruling in 69 AD, but we're going to start where it says 66. So starting here, it says, in 66 AD, Vespasian was appointed to suppress the Jewish revolt underway in Judea. Okay? Now, who was in rule during that time of 66 AD? Nero. And what was Vespasian under Nero? He was a general. Okay? Now, keep in mind Vespasian's sons, because, of course, that's where you get the Flavian dynasty from. You have who? Titus and Domitian. But who was he bringing up at this time? We're going to read about it. It says the fighting there had killed the previous governor. All right, let's keep going. Let's skip down. All right, it says 2 legions with 8 cavalry squadrons and 10 auxiliary cohorts were therefore dispatched under the command of Vespasian, while his elder son Titus arrived from Alexandria with another, and I guarantee you Vespasian appointed Titus to come and join the fight just to build him up to be a leader and understand what war is and how to make movements. So Titus took, that's why you have these arcs of Titus everywhere. Here in Atlanta, at Atlantic Station, there's an arc of Titus just plastered, and that's where a lot of Jake live. And don't know that it's a slap in their face, okay? Because they don't want to do the research that we're doing here, like as we're doing right now today. So what? He brought up his son in this type of environment to groom him and to understand how to be a leader, because he knew that he was going to take over. And after Vespasian knew after he was going away, he would want to have his son, his eldest son, next up to rule. Simple and plain as that. Okay? So Titus was always in the mix as well. This is why it says what? Namely it that was in the midst. That is very important to read in verse 29, because you got to understand the moves that Vespasian was making during this time. So let's go for another article here. It says a struggle for power. Now I'm going to start at the very top. It says this pause was surprising. Now what pause? After who died? Nero. Okay? Nero, people liked him. He actually ruled for about 13 years. So that's a good lengthy time. All right? So fighting stopped. So it says what? This pause was surprising. And it was accompanied by the fact that at this moment, with his son Titus as intermediary, if I'm saying that correctly, Vespasian settled certain differences he had with the neighboring governor of Syria. Right? He was making amends. He needed people on his side for a later charge to what? Get in the position of the Caesar. All right? So Gaius, I can't really pronounce it. So Lachiakim. It says the matters discussed between the two commanders are unknown, but the circumstances cannot but raise the question whether they were already considering a bid for power. You see that? It says Vespasian, and during what? During this time, Vespasian wasn't the emperor, because who came after Nero? Galba. Galba came after Nero. So during this time of what you can say conspiring that Vespasian was doing, Galba was ruling. He let these little peons get into the rulership and waited for the perfect time to strike. That's how a snake does. Okay? That's why the scriptures tell us what? Be harmless as a dove, but be wise as a serpent. The serpent knows exactly when to strike. And Vespasian knew exactly when to strike, but he stayed in the midst, ever so relevant, but ever so secret. And then next thing you know, gets to a point to where he's a ruler. Like I said again, this kind of reminds me of Trump. Whoever thought he would be in the seat to be a president? It came out of nowhere. But he made it there because he made friends and got his way into that seat. All right. So it says such a claim may have been formally valid, but there may have also been underlying political considerations. Vespasian did eventually decide to accept Galba. Right. Think about that. He decided to accept Galba. But who was Vespasian's rivals? Otho and Vitellius. Okay? So, going on, it says, whose noble descent, given the standards of the day, would have been daunting to a man of Vespasian's position in society. He therefore remained quiet, and in the following winter sent Titus to congratulate Galba, staying in the background, but building up his son and grooming him to be a leader still. He had his son Titus making moves as well, and I'm sure Titus had the patience and understanding that he would be in a rulership position here soon, because he was going to set his two sons up to be that ruler, aka the Flavian dynasty, which I think when you go into that word, Flavian means blonde. All right. So going on, it says the news of Galba's murder in January 1569. It says what? Reached Titus. He had Titus be around Galba to get inside scoops. On his way at Corinth, it says, and he returned to participate in a more pregnant decisions between Vespasian and the Syrian governor that was mentioned above here, because that's who he made amends with, you could say. It says a civil war in Italy was now inevitable because what? It was up for grabs. Now, by who? But the main contenders, Otho and Vitellius, were both men who Vespasian could reasonably hope to challenge. He had to get things taken out the way, aka Galba, and he made Otho and Vitellius come against each other, and whoever came out the mist, and of course them fighting against one another would make one another weak. And guess who's been building relationships with everybody and has a following, and who's going to be strong when whoever he goes against, he know he will prevail against. All right? Because he says what? Were both men who Vespasian could reasonably hope to challenge. Everything was being set up in the midst of everything by Vespasian. Again, going back to 2 Esdras 29, namely it that was in the midst. All right? It says the chronology of Vespasian's actions cannot be precisely determined. What is certain is that at the latest after Otho's defeat and suicide on April 16, he began to collect support because who? Otho. Let's go back to it. What verse was Otho? Verse 27. Okay, and verse 28 is Otho and Vitellius. Otho is eliminated in verse 28. Okay, there's a lot of history in verse 28. And Vitellius is up in reign. Now, Otho's supporters are kind of just left out the blank. Who do they support now? They went over to Vespasian because they knew Vespasian will come to Vitellius. They're pissed at Vitellius because they took out Otho. So why were the Otho supporters go on Vitellius' side. They want to see revenge and vengeance. Therefore, they went to Vespasian's side, and Vespasian ultimately took over Vitellius. So that's an understanding of the midst of things. That's an understanding, or a better understanding, from verse 24 to verse 29 on how things transpired and how bloody the Roman Empire was. These Edomites do this stuff to themselves. They could care less, you see? And that's the same thing that's going to happen in our time. They could care less who they're coming down against. If they need to take out a specific mission, they don't care how many people are taken out. And the mission that they want to do is to take out the elect 144, and they don't care how many people they kill doing that. So Lord willing, this was edifying, and of course y'all can go and read about this and get better understanding and actually read through all those articles, which I strongly recommend to understand 2nd Esdras 11 better and get a better understanding on it. So like I said, Lord willing, this is edifying. We'll give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Chakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone to rule and teach well. Peace, love, salutation to the elect 144 first fruit. Brother Kasha Qualin, until the next time. Shalom.